Alright, I wanted to had a video request to talk about domain and range, and so I just wanted to make sure I did do a video on domain and range. And so I wanted to kind of talk about first off what domain and range is. And to put it simply, you may not even have to necessarily watch more than this because this is kind of the gist of it, but your domain is the x values. So if you look here at the top, it says domain and it has a little x here. The domain is the x values and the range is the y values, or sometimes we'll use this here, which is called f of x, meaning it's a function of x, and I'll explain that more in a minute. But the way I kind of look at it is the domain is kind of what is being put into the function. So think of this. This is this is kind of my microwave right here. And so think about like what you put into the microwave is like your domain. Okay, it's the things that you're putting in, or another way to talk about that, we said this before, is your input values. So your input values are what's going in. Okay, the function is sort of the thing that changes everything, and then the output is your range, or what comes out. So if you put, let's think of this as like popcorn here. If I put this bag of popcorn into the microwave, what comes out is a bag of popcorn, okay, but it's actually changed from being like little seeds, like they have like little seeds in here, and then when it comes out, it's popcorn. It's a puffy bag with little popcorn right here. And so your range would be the popcorn, the domain would be the bag with the seeds in it, and then the function would be whatever is changing that bag. And so for another example I'm going to use is like imagine a little seed. So this in this case would be like the domain, because it's what you're putting into the soil. So this is my what do you call it, pot, and so I know it's not a great pot, but this seed is like the domain or the input. I put it into the soil, okay, maybe some water and some other things. Okay, so that would be again my domain, and the output or the range would be the flower. So imagine this is like a flower, okay, and I could put a different seed in instead of a flower. Maybe it's a tomato plant, so it depends on again what you put into it, and that's really what a function deals with. And so just to kind of give you some examples, I've written out an equation here, and I've written out this equation as well because I want to make sure you know that excuse me, that we sometimes want to write things in what's called function notation, and this right here is in function notation. And the basic difference is instead of a y, we put this little f, and sometimes it can be a g or other letters like that, but we put f of x. And really what that means is that whatever this is, so in this case y, it's a function of x, meaning that it depends on what you plug in for x. So for instance, if I plug in 0 here, I get 2 times 0, which is 0, plus 3, which is 3. So this, my y value, becomes 3 because I plugged in 0 for x. So again, your y depends on what you plug in for x. And so what I've done is I've created a table. So this again relates back to here. So if I plug in 0, again 2 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. If I plug in 1, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 is 5. If I plug in 2, so on and so forth. And this is like a little table showing the values that I plugged in. Now if I was to ask you what is the domain of this little table here, the domain is always just going to be the x values. So, and I've written that here. So the domain is just 0, 1, 2, and 3. The range is going to be the y values. So 3, 5, 7, and 9. That's going to be the range. And and I wanted to just kind of make sure like we're going to deal with problems later where the domain and range is not just a list. It's going to be like a specific area, so we may say any number smaller than 5, but we'll talk about that later. But I also wanted to make sure you kind of understood the difference between a function and something that's not a function. If you're looking at it in like coordinates here, a function is something where each x value has one and only one y value. So for instance, 1 here has the y value of 12, 2 has the y value of 5, 3 has the y value of 0. Okay, so each one of these has a specific y value. Okay, this over here is not a function because 1 has an output of 3, but 1 also has an output of 7. And so because 1 has 2 outputs, this whole thing here is not a function. So we can only have, for it to be a function, each x value has to have one and only one output. Now, I do want to say this, like a simple way to say this is that your x values basically are not allowed to repeat if it's going to be a function. You can have something like this to be a function. So let's look at this. If I have 1, 2, 1, and 3, 1. This is a function. The y values are allowed to repeat, but the x values are not. So notice here the 1 is in the x position, and it is not allowed to repeat for it to be a function. So again, I just wanted to do a brief video on domain and range and kind of what a function is. If you have any more questions or do want me to make any more videos on something more specific, just please let me know. All right, guys, hope you have a great day and hope you watch this.